Culver. I'm part of the Kewanee Historical Society Museum, and I thank you all for coming this afternoon to listen to Mr. Bill Scott's presentation. I had the pleasure of meeting him and his wife last fall here in the museum, and even though I was a long-time Kewanee resident, I really didn't know about his accomplishments in the racing world, and the more that he told me, the more interested I became. And I did not realize it's been 65 years. March 7th, 1959 is when he won the 100 at Daytona, partly on asphalt and sand. Just quite a feat. The more he tells me, it's just so interesting. So I knew that we had to hear more from Bill and celebrate a little late his 65th anniversary of winning the annual handlebar race in Daytona.
They call it the handlebar derby.
Yep, and he was on a 1958 750 KR modified Harley Davidson.
Yes,
So,
actually KR stands for the factory racing model.
Yep.
And so it was 750cc
Yep.
factory race bike
Yep.
that was hard to get, but
So I'm going to get out of the way and let him take over, and thank you so much for coming. I'm going to sneak past you, Bill. Take it away.
I apologize for sitting down here. I've had back surgery and I can't stand for long periods of time. And somehow or another, I don't know why the other day I twisted wrong. And I've had heat pads on most of the morning today, trying to get me loosened up so I wouldn't be all crippled up today. Everybody wants to know, how did you get started racing? What started, I was carrying newspapers, morning papers. My morning paper route was all the Chicago papers, the Tribune, Sun-Times, Herald American, and I carried a Peoria paper too, morning paper. I had everything north of the railroad tracks, from Baker Park to East Street, all the way up to Northeast Park. So I was pedaling my little legs off as a 10, 11-year-old kid, delivering all these papers. And one of the Chicago papers, I don't remember if it was the Tribune or the Sun-Times, had a promotion that if you could sign up so many subscriptions, you would get a free motor to mount on your bicycle. Oh, hey, saved my legs. And so I started selling subscriptions. I got a free motor to put on my bicycle. That motor was a piece of crap. It was a little tiny motor that sat up on the front wheel with a friction wheel dragging on your front tire. But it saved my legs a little bit, and I thought I was big stuff, man, pedaling around, and then I could kick that in and go put. And I wasn't having to pedal as much. That kind of got me motivated. So that was probably 49 or 50. I was 11, maybe 12 years old. Then about 1953, I got rid of that thing, and I got me a Harley 125, a little Harley, small bike, and that had a 3-speed transmission, a real clutch, and everything that an honest motorcycle has, and I could deliver my papers on that 125. But you know, my mom always said that I was born with a tight wound spring. So that 125 wasn't enough for me. I had to move up to a 165. That was way faster. That 125 would only do about 40, 45 miles an hour. A 165 would do 60 or 65, man. I got rid of that 125 and got a 165. And the more I learned how to ride that, I stripped the fenders off of it and put knobby tires on it. I was out riding around out in the dirt in the pastures and playing games and all that kind of stuff. Doing hot laps around Baker Park. Baker Park, man, I was out there up and down and doing the corners and everything fast as I could ride it around Baker Park. Lucky I didn't get busted, but I didn't. I fell down a few times, lost some skin on the pavement out there on Baker Park, but it kind of taught me how to go around the corners real fast on the blacktop. And I ran that 165 in scrambles and endurance runs and in dirt races as a kid, and I was pretty successful. I was bringing home trophies pretty regular. I thought, hey, this is my game. I love this. About that time, sophomore in high school, I went out for the track team because I liked sports and I liked the excitement of sports. Well, I knew better than football and basketball, you know. I was barely above 5 feet, 100 0 pounds, I don't know. Just I was small for the kids my age, and so I went out for track, and after practicing a bit, I realized that the dash, the 100-yard, 200 yards, my legs just couldn't stretch out to motivate as quickly as the guys with the long legs. But in a mile, the bigger guys, I could catch up with them, pass them. Cross country, I would have been extremely competitive. I could run, I lived on the north side. I ran to Kewanee High School every day. And I had the lungs for a long distance. The very first big track meet, coach posted a roster on the blackboard of who would be competing. My name wasn't on it. There's guys that I could outrun every day that were on the list. I went in there and I said, Coach, you got these guys that are slower. I'm not on the list. I said, what is this? He says, you're going to have to learn to accept something. He says, track is not really a sport. It's an in-between season where I keep my athletes in shape. And he says, you're too small, you'll never be an athlete, just learn to accept it. Focus on academics. I went in, pulled off my track suit, threw it on his desk, hopped on my bike with knobby tires and everything. The track at Kewanee High School, a nice cinder track. Man, can you get some nice bell slides going out there? He would have killed me if he could have stopped me. But I was sliding around there just having a lot of fun, just tearing up this track. Lucky for me, Dinsmore Wood was a good friend of my father. And I didn't get expelled, but I had to rake the track down every night after practice. And that really frosted my cookies because I didn't really want to be doing something nice for that coach that I detested. And it just, that whole situation kind of turned me off to school. I had been a top line 3 A's and a B student, B in English. Can you imagine that, a B in English? And now I'm a prolific writer. But anyhow, after that, I was a mediocre student. I just did enough to get by. Didn't participate in anything in the school activities. I was out in the garage working on my bike. And so I was, if you looked at a Kewanee High School yearbook, there's almost nothing behind my name. Because I just, okay, I'm not part of, you don't like me, I don't like you, I'm out of here. As soon as, well, I escaped from Kewanee High School finally. About 1955, I'd moved up from my 165 Harley. I bought a 1951 Harley K-Model. It's a predecessor to the Sportster, if you know Harleys. It was the predecessor to the Sportster, and I converted that for dirt. Can you imagine a 110-pound rider on a 400-pound bike out there riding, throwing it sideways in the dirt and everything? But I was doing it, and I was having some success with trophies every so often. After 2 or 3 years of playing with that, I bought a brand new Harley Davidson KR 750cc. That's the factory race model. If you wanted to be competitive in the professional circuit, you had to be on a Harley KR. The British bikes, they were kind of competitive, but the KR was the bike. Everybody needed a KR to be a winner. So I bought a KR. Now KR was limited production. They only made a couple hundred a year or something like that. And you had to apply for it and get approved from the Harley factory. But I had kind of a little bit of a reputation, and I got approved finally after a couple letters to the Harley factory, and they sold me a KR. I had a brand new Harley KR. We put together our factory, our little race team. My brother was 20. I was 18, maybe pushing 19. My cousin was about a year younger than me, and John Good was 16. John Good was an electrician in Kewanee. A lot of you people might know John Good. We're 4 kids, barely out of adolescence. Basic technical skills, nothing super special about our backgrounds or anything like that. We were going to compete against factory teams, professional racers. We were too dumb to know we're totally outclassed. we didn't realize that, man, those guys are way better than us. They got better stuff. They can afford better equipment. Our limited budget, 4 kids, what are you gonna do? You know, we proved ourselves. We had a 1950 Oldsmobile with 200,000 miles on the clock and a single row trailer. Put the bike on a trailer and tied it down with ropes and wrapped it up with a tarp to protect it from the elements. We pulled into the racetrack and nobody paid much attention. After a day of racing's over, they knew who we were. They knew. We were in the front of the pack, even winning occasionally. But the first year of racing, you have a yellow number plate with black letters on it. In NASCAR, the rookies have a yellow bumper on their car. So the first year of racing, you got a yellow number plate. Well, none of these superstar professionals want to see a yellow plate out there in front of them, so it's pretty tough. But we occasionally won some, but we were always right there making the people that did win earn it. We had enthusiasm, and that's all that counts. After the day of racing was over, we put our bike back on the single row trailer. People were saying, "Who are those kids?" They're kids. Who are they? You know, you think about it. Coach told me, "You're never going to be an athlete. Forget about it. You're not big enough." What is an athlete? Think about it. What does it take to be an athlete? You have to have timing. You have to have coordination. You have to have special recognition and reflexes, endurance, and a determination, a will to win. this attitude that, by golly, that guy doesn't deserve to be there in front of me. Or you see this with superstar athletes. Singletary, his eyes were this big. He knew what was happening all the time when that ball was in motion. And you see Michael Jordan and the big basketball players. They could follow that ball. There's something in the human mind, and I talked it over with a psychologist one time when I was in college. And he said that they had done time and motion studies where they understand that premier athletes can slow down the action. You might see it going like this. Or Singletary and the big stars can slow it down in their mind. And I believe I had that in my head, because I couldn't drive home from a racetrack because my mind is going real slow, and if I'm driving 70 miles an hour, it seems like 25. So you're mentally detuning the action around you, and it takes a little while to. If you've ever watched drag racing, there's what's his name, big superstar in drag racing, John Force. Interview him afterward. He's talking like this, but his mind is still in that. When you can drive in a straight line at 300 miles an hour in 4 seconds, there's something in a person's head that a lot of people don't have. After competing with my KR in the dirt tracks and the things around Illinois, I brought a steel shoe. You've heard of the steel shoe. You put that on your boot, and when you're in the corner, you can stand up on that steel shoe and turn the bike sideways, and you're guiding it with your foot, and you can lift the front wheel. You actually pull the front wheel in if it starts going out, and you steer with the throttle, because you're on your shoe. If you're starting to go out toward the outside of the track, you give it more gas. That'll bring the back wheel around and push the front end into the inside of the corner. And it takes a little while to get used to that thought that if you're drifting to the outside of the track, you want to slow down. No, you give it more gas, that'll bring the back wheel out and push the front wheel in. And you're on your shoe doing that. And it's a little tricky to learn, but you acquire that after a few times, and drifting out and scaring yourself almost out against the outer edge of the fence or the wall. I hit the front wall at Springfield one time on a mile track. Hit it so hard I bent my frame. Mile track, doing probably something over 100 miles an hour. So you kind of, sometimes you get in over your head too. In 1958, June of 1958, we'd been playing around in the dirt tracks around town, or around the Midwest here, and the big thing talk was the road racing out East Coast. A lot of road racing out East Coast. June of '58, Laconia, New Hampshire had a national championship race, 50-mile national. We put on pavement type tires, put air scoops in the brakes, and converted my bike to a road racer. we went out to Laconia, New Hampshire. Well, my time in Baker Park served me well, man. I knew how to go around corners on pavement. Showed up out there, kids with their bike wrapped up with a tarp, 50 Oldsmobile, everything they had was in the trunk of the car. All these teams with their fancy haulers and everything else. We won it. 50 miles. It was on the side of a mountain, up and down the hill, on the side of the mountain. Tight corners. Baker Park. I knew how to ride up and down hills and pavement. So, after that experience, the New England Harley-Davidson Dealers Association offered me $100 anytime that I'd show up out there for a road race. Well, $100 doesn't sound like much to you now. But at that time, if you had a really good job, you might be making $80, $85 a week. So $100 bonus is, man, I'll take that. So every chance I got to go out to New England, you could go out there for probably less than $50 for gas and toll fees and everything else. At that time, 30 cents a gallon for gas. And so the Harley Dealers Association and the New England Dealers Association was paying me on top of whatever the purse was. And in the fall, September of 58, I was in Marlboro, Maryland, which is just one of the south suburbs of DC. I won a 75-mile national championship. I'd won a 50-mile at Laconia, 75-miler at Marlboro, and at Marlboro, I was running, just kind of pacing myself. I was in 4th place for a long time. There's 20-some curves on a less than 3-mile track. I think they grabbed a cow by the tail and followed him around for the day, and that was the track. But finally, in one lap, I decided, this is it. I passed all 4 in half a lap. And then I stretched out a pretty good lead, so the Harley Dealers Association, the DC dealer walked over to me, and he said, Scotty, he said, you put on a show today. Gave me a $50 bill. In addition to, now $50 is a lot of money at that time, so I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. Then that was Labor Day of 58, September 21st, 1958. We were at the shop and we were thinking, boy, not sure if I have enough points to run at Daytona in the fall, because you have to have a certain level of points to qualify for the lineup. And so there was another road race at Fort Worth, Texas. Called them up. They described the track to us. It was on an airport runway at the National Guard Air Base. And so we put the sprockets on, took the front wheel off the car and shoved the bike in the station wagon, a friend's station wagon. My brother and Johnny O'Kane and myself, we drove all night down to Fort Worth, Texas. That was before expressways, so it's a long ways. And I shouldn't have done it. Man, I was tired. I was not alert. But I thought I'd build my points level so I'd be good for Daytona. But when we got to Fort Worth, the practice sessions were all over and everything, but they would let me line up for the first heat race. The heat race would give you a starting position in the final. So I lined up with everybody else. I hadn't seen what the rest of the track looked like. What was right in front of me. I had to learn the track, learn the shutoff points and the unique situation of the pavements, because all those pavements have a different traction feel. And so you kind of learn what your breakaway point is on the traction. So I rode in the middle of the pack for a while, and I don't remember even starting that race today, but I finished first with a track record. I don't know how I did that, but I set a track record, first place, still pushing that yellow plate out there, and all the guys with their white plates didn't want to see that yellow plate in front of them. So I got to line up on the front row in the final. I think they had about 6 guys across the front row. And here's yellow plate number 59 with all these white plates. And for first 2 or 3 laps, I was in the lead. Then finally, this guy, his name's Jack Golson. He passed away. He crashed at Lincoln, Illinois, and got killed. But he was from that area, and he was known to push the limit, just right at the edge and maybe a little bit beyond. So I was out in front, and he came in, and I don't remember this because I had a concussion. I've lost track of it, but everybody's told me what happened. He came in under me, and we're leaning into a real fast corner, 100-mile-an-hour corner, and he slid out and took me and launched me over the high side. I came down on my right shoulder and the very top of my helmet. I had scratch marks going across the top of my helmet. My shoulder was totally crushed. It took surgery to put everything back together. And they said that I slid over 300 feet down the blacktop. The ambulance people told my brother, they thought they were hauling in a corpse. You probably guessed that they were wrong. It took a while to repair everything. I had a broken jaw, 2 bones broken there, and 2 bones broken there, and everything broken and crumbs. My collarbone was crumbs, and pins and wires and everything, and my shoulder blade was back against my backbone. Took a while to put everything back together, and I healed slowly. That was September of 58. January of 59, doctor finally said that I was healed. He would be willing to sign my competition license, the release, so that I could get my competition license renewed. So I started a workout routine you wouldn't believe. I was doing 50 push-ups, 2-3 times a day. I was running around Baker Park. I'd do 2 or 3 laps around Baker Park, up and down the hills, and building up my endurance, my strength. I wanted to be at Daytona. We rebuilt that bike that I'd crashed, and we set it up. I mean, we didn't leave any detail untouched. The inside of that engine, we polished the crankshaft, the rods, everything inside was polished smoother than glass. We didn't want oil sticking to anything that wasn't lubricated. So we polished everything so smooth that oil couldn't cling to it at all and create drag. We had one of the local guys was in there when we were working on it, and he said, "Man, if a fly had landed on that, he'd fall down and break his leg." after I got the crank all done and everything ready to go, I took it into Milwaukee to the Harley factory to have them balance it on their spin machine. And the head engineer in the racing department said, "Man, I've never seen a prettier bottom end for any engine than you guys did." He said, "I want to compliment you." He said, "That is beautiful." And our transmission, we set up a table, clamped the transmission down on a table with an electric motor turning it, made a slurry of Bond MI and automatic transmission fluid, and lapped in the gears. You know, anybody that's worked on machinery knows that when you mesh gears together, you can feel them click, kind of a little bit of a drag. After we did that, they were smooth. We went down to Peoria Bearing. I don't know if Peoria Bearing's still there. Went down to Peoria Bearing, and a lot of people aren't aware, but old man Berlin told us about this, that there are 4 different grades of bearings. There's an agricultural grade that you can use in wheels for a little trailer that's only going to go 12 miles an hour. There's an automotive grade, and then there's 2 more precision grades. If you use the top precision grade that's used for turbines and machine tools, where everything is perfect, it costs more, but the bearings are perfect. So we took that transmission, washed everything up, got it all clean, all the grit and everything out of it, put in these turbine grade bearings. They give that a little nudge, and then there's no friction in that baby. We even packed the wheel bearings with Vaseline. Somebody said, "Vaseline? That's not going to last long." What's Vaseline? It's petroleum jelly. Won't last long. Only need 1 hour. It'll last 1 hour. We even modified the frame. There was a rule. You see on a Harley factory frame, you have these forgings, and then there's forging up here and forgings under the bottom of the engine and everything. And the AMA has a rule: they can't modify the frame because there were too many people that were doing homebrew modifications, and they were not safe. Frames were breaking and people were crashing, and so they just made a rule: no modifying the frame. So we cut all that stuff out, got rid of all these forgings, and it borderline not within the rule book, but to hide it, we glued balsa wood back in, smoothed it all out, repainted it. All those forgings were replaced with balsa wood. We didn't leave any money on the table. We tried to brainstorm, come up with every thought we could come up with to make it. Well, we got down to Daytona, and in spite of everything we'd done to fix this thing as right as we could make it, we looked at what some of these other teams had. Man, there was Triumphs down there. They had several Triumphs, factory made. They were super special. Only they're turning 12,000 RPMs, and they had a Pirelli there that was they brought over the European world champion. Franco Farn was his name, F-A-R-N-E. Franco Farn. He was the world champion road racer. And they brought him over there because Daytona is March, and all these manufacturers want to showcase their stuff and the beginning of the season and show how great our machines are for that year, new models and all that stuff. We had the British teams. We had Triumph, BSA, and Norton. Norton had a fast what they called the Norton Manx, was a overhead cam and all the fancy stuff that was way beyond our imagination. They had factory teams from Spain, Italy, Germany, BMW, Moto Guzzi, here we are. They have their big haulers and all their fancy stuff, and their engineers, as soon as they come in from a practice session, the guy gets his arm off, or his leg off the back, slings it over the side of the bike, and here's 3 engineers out there checking the heat on the cylinder walls, and checking the tire pressure, checking. And we have this Oldsmobile with everything we have in the trunk of the car. 200,000 miles on the Olds. The bike's all wrapped up in a tarp. We're thinking, oh my goodness. The Japanese teams, Yamaha and Honda, had their massive crew out there. And they have radar guns. Brand new stuff, radar guns. Man, they're checking everybody with the radar guns. Sliding beads with an abacus. Calculators hadn't been invented. And they're writing their notes that only they could read. Looks like chicken scratches. And we thought, we have to compete with these guys. But I'm only a second-year competitor. Got rid of my yellow plate. I got a white plate on my bike now. They're out there with their high-fluting engines that'll turn 12,000 RPM. If you know engines, you know that the more revs you turn on an engine, you lose horsepower at the bottom end, but you get more speed at the top end, if you can turn it at the top end. Compare like a farm tractor, low RPM, all kinds of pulling power. You can pull trees out. With an Indy car turning 14,000 RPMs, it'll do 300 miles an hour, but it will pull itself off of a start. You see them taking off at Indy or something like that. They have to slip the clutch to get it moving, keep the RPMs up. Well, at Daytona, you have to consider it's a big 4.2 mile oval, bean shape. On the beach, you're in a curve to the right, and you're more rolling resistance in the sand. And then you make a U-turn and you go on a blacktop road. It's a slight left turn all the way down for just short of 2 miles. Make another U-turn and then go back out on the beach. At the end of the beach, when you're coming into the corners, everybody's hanging onto the brakes and downshifting. You dig big ruts in the sand, knee-deep ruts. And the same way at the south turn, coming out on the beach, everybody's on the throttle. You're digging ruts again. You get knee-deep ruts. So after a few laps in the race, you kind of look at it, you pick a rut you like, lock your knees on the tank, and it's like riding a plank at 80 miles an hour around a curve. And so it's a little bit tricky. And then when you go in the north turn, going from the beach onto the blacktop, you're dragging all this sand from the beach on your tires and on the pavement. It's like riding on ice for a couple hundred yards. So there's a whole different set of skills than you're used to in any other kind of event. Franco Farn, who was the world champion road racer, he rode about 3-4 laps and he pulled in the pits. He says, "Nope, this is it. I'm done. I'm not doing this." That took Ducati out. They had a Ducati a 350, which was giving up a lot of engine size, but they thought that with their smaller bike and with him, and he's only 85 pounds or something, isn't he? Midget guy. Smaller than me. And he said, you guys are crazy. But I'll say it to everybody, God was with us that day at Daytona. Who controls the weather? No human being can control the weather. Only the Lord above controls the weather. On the day of the race, there's a 40, 50 mile an hour north to south wind blowing down the beach. You're going north against the wind, in the sand. You gotta have torque. You can't have a 12,000 RPM no torque engine. There are some people frantically changing at the last minute. Some of these teams that had all the resources they could deal with, they're changing transmissions so they can have a third gear on the beach and fourth gear, and then you're pulling hard against the sand and the wind, and then you get on the backstretch on the pavement, you're on blacktop, and you got a tailwind. The first of the race, I was back, I don't know, 4th, 5th place. And some of the rabbits started blowing up, over revving their engines. Or some of them, the guys, if the rider was real alert, he's watching the tack and he's backing off on the throttle when it got up in the point where it was dangerous. So about 30 miles into the race, I took over the lead. And I started stretching out farther and farther and farther ahead. At the end of 100 miles, I was 4 miles ahead of second place. I won that race by 2 minutes and 39 seconds. In a game where a couple hundredths of a second, you can get 3 or 4 competitors together. I was 2.5 minutes ahead. I could have pulled in and had a ham sandwich and still won. But then all the competitors, the factory teams and all that said, those kids can't be legal. They can't be legal. That Harley cannot beat us like that. So somebody put up the money for a protest. I think it was $50 at that time. You had to pull the heads off, measure the bore and stroke, and take a gas sample. We were legal. 10 thousandths oversized on a piston. And the gas, of course, it's just gas. And so we got an extra $50 bonus for that. If you're legal, you get to keep the protest money. If you're not, you lose everything. Daytona is something else that you'll find interesting. The starting, like I said, I time trialed 4th fastest, so I was on the front row, 4th one out. I think they put 8 to a row, and they have probably 6 or 8 rows. I think there's about 60 people that started the race. And they have, the starter is up in a lifeguard stand, like for the beach lifeguards. And he holds up a big sign there that is probably 2 feet wide and 3-4 feet tall. It has a 2 on it. Tells you 2 minutes till race time. You're getting all hyped up and ready. Then he turns it around, a 1 on it. 1 minute till race time. You better be ready. He turns it sideways. It's going to happen any moment. And then the starter, use a starter gun. Well, you can't hear a gun with all the engines. So it's a big old cannon. got a puff of smoke goes out over the ocean. That tells you, you better be going or you're going to get run over. And so it's a cannon start, and you have to, getting a start on the beach, they start the race at low tide, so it's at the widest it's going to be. And so you have to kind of feather the clutch and the throttle so you don't spin and dig a hole in the sand and bury yourself, not move out of your own way. And so there's a few that kind of get messed up in that. But then I got going, and I'm running 4th or 5th place somewhere in there. But I was kind of taking it careful because I just had a fatal accident less than 6 months before that. Oh, it wasn't fatal, but serious. And I was running conservatively, and finally, after I got moving along, I was cruising down the beach at one point, and Harley had an advantage there too, because I richened up my carburetor just a little bit to save my engine, and here comes a Triumph, just creeping by me. I thought, well, hey. So I reached back down, 2 clicks leaner on the carburetor, gone. And all the other bikes, British bikes and all the import bikes, they use a fixed jet in the carburetor where you can't adjust it. Where the Harley you could just reach over the side of the tank and wrench your leaner on the carburetor, and so you could kind of tune it in and wrenching it up a little bit, keep your engine running cooler. And so that another bonus for the Harley. So that was our big experience. We proved that we were legal. The factory teams. This guy that you see in the picture there has to be more than a lap, probably 2 laps behind, because I was 2.5 minutes ahead of second place. And then in 2009, 50 years after I'd won the race, Ruth Ann said, let's go to Daytona. She says, 50-year anniversary. She said, I want to go to Daytona. Let's go down there. So we said, all right. So Danny and Diane and they made arrangements to go too. And so we went down to Daytona, and we hadn't expected. Danny had called ahead and made a bunch of arrangements with people, and we were interviewed. We were treated like visiting dignitaries. Afterward, we started figuring out how many meals did we pay for. I think maybe 2 or 3 meals that we paid for. We were at Red Lobster one night, and the whole group of us from this area, we had our dinner at Red Lobster, nice dinner, and they all got their tickets. I said to the waitress, I said, hey, you didn't bring my ticket, or you skipped me. She says, oh, that gentleman over there at that table took care of your ticket. I walked over and shook his hand, and he says, I was listening to your conversations. He said, anybody that can win a race on Daytona, racing on the beach, is going to get a free meal from me every day of the week. And we were out at the racetrack watching the ARMA races, American Historic Racing Association, and Ruth Ann wondered. She was having trouble with her knees, really sore knees. And guy parking the car. She said, "Can we park up close?" She says, "I have bad knees." So he had us park up there close by they were doing technical inspections. And so when we got out of the car, she thanked him. She said, "I have to take my antique racer in to look at the antique bikes." He said, "You used to race?" And she gives him the whole spiel. She's my PR person.
PR.
And he says, "You won Daytona?" He says, "Would you be willing to sign autographs for us?" He says, "We'll give you a free meal." Okay. So they were selling posters. I don't know, I don't have one of those posters. But they were selling posters that had on it, I should have brought mine. It's the great men of motorcycling. And then they had a whole line of old racers along the table there, and handed out Sharpies for all of us, and somebody buy a poster, and then you could walk down the table and get each person to sign it. We were sitting there talking among ourselves, and there was a young fellow standing behind us. He says, "I love to listen to these old racers talk about their stories of the old times." I said, "If you listen long enough, you might hear one that's true." And there was, sitting right next to me, was a fellow that came from the Quad Cities, Johnny Tibbins. He used to ride national number 60. I had 59. And he turned around to the guy on the side of him. He says, "I can attest to this guy's being fast." He said, "We were at a road race in Milwaukee, and he said, I was riding my heart out, and he said, I wasn't going to let that yellow plate finish ahead of me." He says, "I can't tell you how many times I almost fell down, and he still finished ahead of me." I wasn't even aware of that until I didn't know that I knew Johnny Tibbins, but I wasn't aware of that. But that fall then, Denny came over to my house, Denny Packey, and he said, "Hey, it's kind of slow down at the shop." He says, "Why don't we pull your KR out and take it down the shop and do a restoration?" And we talked it over for a while. He says, "Come on, let's do it." He had his pickup. I said, "All right." So by the time I got out in the garage, he had the tailgate open, the plank down, and ready to load my bike up. And it was pretty rough. This bike, that's part of the restoration. And after you've restored a race bike and it's all premium and good, back to race trim, you think, I want to race it again. I'd never gotten to race on a speedway. I got drafted. You remember there was a problem in Cuba about that time, and I got drafted to deal with this problem in Cuba, so I never got to run on a speedway. And so I sent my application in to ARMA to find out what the rules were in setting up my bike. That's basically the bike that we took down there and restored. And I've got the rules and things that we had to do to meet their standards for this what they called Classic 50s 750cc class, which was, my bike was Classic 50s 750cc. So we did a restoration at Denny's shop, and we did everything to meet their standards. You see here, we're on a frame. Well, this one I did it again. See, I glued balsa wood back in there. I wanted it just like I did back in the day. And anyhow, we put it together, and I was 71 years old. And we're trying to get everything down as it should be to meet their rules, their standards. So we got the bike all done. ARMA said that you don't have any points in our system. You have to have points. They looked at my application. They could see, born in 1938, this old geezer thinks he can run a Daytona. What's he think? So they said there's a qualifier race at Savannah, Georgia, 2 weeks before Daytona. If you can finish in the top 10 at Savannah, we'll let you on the track at Daytona. Thinking, this old fart's not gonna make this. So we went down to Savannah, unloaded the bike, had to break in the engine, break in the tires. I hadn't been on a bike for decades. Got fourth. So ARMA said, all right, you're in the top 10, you get to run to Daytona. So we took it to Daytona, and Bob Jacobs from the postcards from home. Have you seen that? He had a TV show on Friday nights. He called it Postcards from Home on the Peoria TV channel. He taught cinematography at Bradley, Dr. Jacobs. And he's a Harley guy. He just happened to stop in the shop and we were basic frame and all of that. He kept stopping in off and on, filming our progress as we put the bike together. And he went down to Daytona with us. And he mounted a camera up on the handlebars so that he could record it. And I was riding right up against the wall at Daytona. So I could get him some good footage. I didn't know that the magneto on the bike killed his wireless camera. And he didn't get anything out of it. But I was having fun riding right at the top there going, and they had a transponder on the bike. You can see it in some of the pictures. It tells them exactly how fast you're going, where you are. They know where everybody on the track is, according to that transponder. And so, according to the chart that they posted, I was doing lap after lap at 130 miles an hour, which at 71 years old, that's a pretty good pace. At the first part of that race, I was dicing it up pretty good with a guy on a Triumph, British bike. And he was really working. I mean, he wanted to win that race. And I thought, well, this is stupid. I'm just out here to have fun. And I know that you can get hurt doing this. So I just settled back and paced that I was comfortable. I finished second. He got first. See in this picture, it disappeared. You can see on the forklift they put a transponder up there, and they know what's happening with everybody. And when somebody stops, they have that in NASCAR. They can tell you that car number 12 is 2.76 seconds ahead of whatever. They can read that on their computer up in the tower, which is cool stuff. Our bike was the most photographed bike in the paddock area. We had all these photographers taking pictures of our bike. Japanese guys with bandoliers, with lenses and all this stuff, and taking pictures of every angle on that bike. I don't know why they were so fascinated by that one. There were a lot of other nice bikes in the paddock area, but they just milled around our bike. It caught everybody's attention. We were there. I'm putting a new rim on mine. I had to lace up a new rim for it. I finished second down there after I was 71 years old. Not as brave as I was when I was 19. But I kind of proved, maybe in a way, that the first win 50 years previous wasn't just a fluke. There's still people that kind of. A funny story. I was up the Y one day after my swimming, and I was in the locker room getting dressed. I pulled a Harley t-shirt on, and two guys in the row of lockers right behind me. Guy says, "Oh, you're a Harley guy?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "What kind of bike you got?" I said, "Well, I have 5 of them." He says, 5 bikes? I said, "What kind are they?" I said, "Well, they're basically a bunch of old race bikes." He said, "You're a racer?" I said, "Yeah, I used to compete on the national circuit." He says, "You ever win anything big?" I said, well, I won Daytona in 1959 when it was still on the beach." He says, "Whoa, you must have been pretty good." His buddy turned around and smacked him like this. He says, "Dumbass." He says, "If you're pretty good, you might be able to compete at Daytona, but if you're going to win at Daytona, you got to be damn good." I would close with maybe here a story. Dizzy Dean. Some of you people that know baseball know Dizzy Dean. He was an all-star baseball player, and then he turned to broadcaster. His country boy had his country ways about him. Dizzy Dean used to say, "It ain't bragging if you can do it." So what I'm telling you now, I ain't bragging. I did it. That's
Lori coming down to surprise us just like she did today.
my daughter back there.
She's here again.
When I was riding scrambles and stuff when I had the Harley dealership in Joliet, I fixed up some little bikes for dirt bike, because all these guys with the Jap bikes used to make fun of the little Harleys. I massaged them. I made those little Harleys outrun the Jap bikes on every day of the week. And there's a couple pictures there. And so Lori used to go with us to the races. When I went down there for that ARMA race in 2010, she called her mom on a cell phone. She says, "Mom," she said, "David is out at the airport." My nephew lives in Denver. He's out at the airport. He came down to see Dad race. And she says, "He doesn't have your phone number. Can you pick him up at the airport?" So everything goes over the airport to pick up David. There she is. She says, "I couldn't let my daddy race if I wasn't there."
Mom used the naughty word when she saw me.
When she was in high school, some of the kids on their Jap bikes would tease her about. She was riding a little Harley to school, and some of the kids were teasing her about, "Oh, their Jap bike was way faster. or Kawasaki, I'll outrun those Harleys, all that stuff. So over the winter, I tore her engine down. And I fixed it. One day she pulled out of the school parking lot, hooked second gear in the front wheels like that. Oh, Evel Knievel! I don't know. Here's an interesting thing. I'll share this with you. This is my first helmet in 1950-51. Little tin hat. Got a web liner like a construction hard hat. That was the way. And then what in the pictures you see there, I'm wearing an open face helmet. And then they started requiring the full face. So this kind of helmet was probably as good as anything you could get at that time. Even Dale Earnhardt used to use an open face helmet with little punky bubble goggles, and it killed him too. And then they ruled no more of that. You can't do that. The steel shoe, you wouldn't know that's my old dirt track steel shoe.
Where's the full face? Where is it now? Where'd it go?
Yeah, my matched this to a full face. The pickers bought that from me.
Right.
And they wanted this one. I said, nope, I'm gonna keep one. That KRW helmet company gave me a pair of those just because they put my name and number on it. Just one of those freebies. Just, of course, they're gonna have their brand name out there too. Any questions?
I believe that your bike is in the museum down at Raymond's, right?
Yes, in
Yeah,
there.
so if anybody wants to see his bike, just head on down to Raymond's. Yeah, and they have a motorcycle museum and his bike is there. I want to thank you on behalf of the Kewanee Historical Society for coming and talking to everybody. I want to thank everybody that came here. We do have some refreshments that we provided. Thank you, Norma, for your contribution. And let's see, I have a list. Okay. The museum is open Thursdays and Saturdays, 1 to 4. Hog Days banners we have for sale as one of our major fundraisers. And KewaneeMemoryLane, if you didn't know, we have a podcast. And we have available this hide and seek game. It's history hide and seek. And handouts are available. You just have to, there's lots of questions. You only have to do 5 on each side. So, and then turn it back in, and there's a wonderful prize that we'll be giving out in the fall. And these are due back in October 1st. So also one of the things that is in the works is what we are calling Coffee Talk, where we're going to invite the public to come in and just talk about a topic. Just talk, just so we can get some old stories and information from people that lived it. So we're looking forward to that, and thank you all for coming.
The stories have to be true.
Names and places have to be true. Stories are
But we're
stories.
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
There's so many people that have a wealth of information about Kewanee history. It'd be good to have a coffee and talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you want to visit with Bill, he's got books. He can autograph. There's treats. Feel free to roam a little bit. We do have to close pretty soon.
And I bet those are good cookies.
Norma.
Norma.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
good.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.